Hi guys, welcome back to the channel Karowiko Reactions, and today we are reacting to a video that is causing a lot of debate across the United Kingdom, the Caribbean and Africa. The video discusses a controversial proposal from Reform UK, which suggests banning visas for citizens of countries that demand slavery reparations from Britain. Now, before we get started, I want to remind everyone that this is currently a political proposal, not an actual law, but the conversation surrounding it raises important questions about immigration, history, accountability, and international relations.
Said that you want to block visas for nations that ask for slavery reparations.
Yeah.
You're basically saying you won't give visas then to huge swathes of the Caribbean and Africa. Let's just list the countries that have asked for slavery reparations: Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, Antigua, Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya. The list goes on. You think that's a feasible and operative plan?
If they continue to make, if they can make, well, being thwarted by lawfare. Here's another thing people really need to understand. I think people watching GB News do understand this. His Majesty's Parliament is sovereign. This notion that, a minister will sit there and a prime minister will sit there and just get overruled by courts. If we pass primary legislation to ensure those things happen, it will happen. You can mark my words on that. And do we again, it
so
was,
you're quite happy blocking people coming from the Caribbean or Africa, say for instance if they have relatives here, you're going to say you just can't come because your country, even if you don't personally support it, supports slavery reparations?
I think you're making the exact argument about why their outrageous demands that people watching this program should pay them reparations.
Outrageous to demand slavery reparations, but people might equally think that it might be using a sledgehammer.
Well, then if it's outrageous, it's about time Britain... Do you not agree, Camilla? It's about time Britain grew a backbone. And what we're saying is, if Nigel Farage is our Prime Minister, we're not going to allow Britain to be slapped around on the world stage. By the way, number one, Keir Starmer abstained outrageously in the UN vote about this matter. Number two, over the last 20 years, and again, the Tories are in power for the majority of that, those countries you just listed who are demanding reparations, we granted those countries millions of visas and issued them £6 billion, billion with a B in foreign aid. We've had enough of British people being taken advantage of.
Some of the people that come from the Caribbean and Africa have made their lives here and are paying taxes and are embracing British values, aren't they?
In which case, they are almost certainly British citizens.
Talking about banning visas from countries who are demanding reparations from Britain. Now, the problem here is that we are talking about a number of Commonwealth countries in the Caribbean. How do you think this is going to go down with His Majesty the King?
Well, we're most concerned about doing the right thing for the British people. Look, there's a racket going on now for years. Countries are lining up, claiming in some cases trillions of pounds in reparations for supposed crimes from centuries ago. Britain was the first major power to abolish the slave trade in 1807 and spent almost 2% of its national income for 60 years enforcing that ban on the high seas, lost thousands of heroic soldiers through sailors through the West Africa squadron. So what Reform is saying is simple. Any country, if Reform's in government, any country that makes a vexatious demand like this for reparations, which is obviously insulting and outrageous, we're not going to tolerate it anymore and just allow Britain to be slapped around. And British taxpayers will no longer just be an ATM for ethnic grievances from across the world. We will ban visa issuances to nationals of those countries. And over the last 20 years, Tory and Labour governments have issued 3.8 million visas to nationals of those countries and £6.6 billion in aid. That'll go too.
The UK is not playing with these Africans or Caribbeans. They say if you ask for reparations because of the transatlantic slave trade, you're not coming to their country.
Reform UK would block visas from anyone from countries which have demanded reparations over slavery. This would halt legal migration from 17 countries that are calling for financial compensation over Britain's role in the slave trade. The ban would block people from getting work, study and temporary visas. Reform Zia Youssef has said the bank is closed and the door is locked for anyone who wanted to use history as a weapon to drain our treasury. So which 17 countries would be affected? African nations Nigeria, Kenya and Ghana Ghana are among the countries which have called for compensation, as well as 11 Caribbean countries, including the Bahamas, Barbados and Jamaica. Reform's announcement comes as the government and the royal family face pressure to agree to talks on reparations. Experts have estimated these would amount to trillions of pounds.
They have a point. It's like y'all double dipping because everybody benefited from the transatlantic slave trade. You take the Caribbeans, they got countries out of the transatlantic slave trade. There was indigenous people in these islands before the transatlantic slave trade took place, but afterwards, now the descendants of those slaves are basically over those countries. When the oppressed become the oppressors, that's the sum of it, right? And you talk about Africa, especially Ghana and Nigeria, they was begging the British not to abolish slavery because it was going to impact their economy. I feel like the U.S. should adopt the same policies. If your country is talking about reparations from the United States when the United States had nothing to do with it, the only people that should be talking about reparations from the United States is Black Americans. But yeah, let me know what y'all think about this policy, because this is from the Reform UK Party. If they become the dominant force in Parliament, this is what they're going to implement. Shout out to Nigel. Let me be specific. The only people deserve reparations from the transatlantic slave trade in America, the United States, is Black Americans. And that Ghanaian president, yeah,
This is the reason why. Because Jamaica is pushing for reparations, the UK, the party that is currently in the opposition, say anytime them come in a power, them are going to make sure that Jamaica get banned. Because Jamaica is one of the countries that have always lobbied for reparations. You see, Dr. Ali from Donga, Guyana, I remember him go on one interview with one of the man them, and as soon as him get the opportunity, him tell him, say, look here, none of never have a problem for benefit from slavery. The whole want to sit down up there in the White Houses and all of those places well comfortable benefiting from slaves, but yet still when it come time for to pay back black people, everybody hush hush and everybody broke. There was a black person who came in my comments and asked, why is it that we should be reparated when we're not slaves? Why is it that they reparated people who never owned slaves back in 2015? Why would they do such a thing? Everybody had the money to pay the descendants of slave owners, but when it come time for we get little shillings, everybody have a problem. There are plantations in this country that are still owned by the descendants of slave owners. Plantations that mine and your ancestors build. Them can block with from every country in this world. I don't care. Wow, with reparations. That's how we are defending. That's how me are telling us on the need for remain focus. All of this, black people are a set of people. Black people remind me of Jacob and Esau. Esau was willing to give away his birthright for a little food. We out here were willing to give away everything, every single thing for one little.
A political party called Reform UK is proposing to ban the visas of countries who had voted for reparations for slavery. As an advocate of Jamaica and someone who is in talks and has conversations and knows people on the ground and has family in Jamaica, I would like to invite you all to a protest that's occurring on April 13th to speak out against British colonialism and to retrieve Jamaica back to the people. Now, although Jamaica claims to be an independent country, it is still very much owned by the British. The British High Court have the ability to overturn and override what the Jamaican courts say. And that's why we've seen certain people released from prison when the Jamaican government did not support that as such. Nor did many of the Jamaican people, let's just be honest. But most importantly, the British monarchy has taken advantage of the vulnerability of the people in Jamaica. They are guilty of violating the human rights of Jamaicans. And it's time for Jamaicans to stand up against them. It's time for all of us to use our voice and start speaking out. And if you are in Jamaica, then please join us on March 13 to speak out against the injustices that have been happening toward Jamaicans in Jamaica at the hands of the British monarchy. Join us on April 13 at 11 a.m. at the JDF Admiral office. Fight with your fellow Jamaicans and stand up for what's right. This is the No British Imposter protest. If you'd like more information, please check the caption where you can give us a shout and we can support you along the way.
Let's talk about the audacity. The UK's Reform Party just threatened to ban visas for Ghana and 16 other African and Caribbean nations, all because they asked for reparations for the transatlantic slave trade. 7 European countries, including the UK, enslaved and trafficked more than 15 million Africans across the Atlantic. And that stolen labor built Western wealth. Now they want to punish the descendants for asking to be repaid. Last month, the UN declared that the transatlantic slave trade was the gravest crime against humanity, and they called for reparations. The UK abstained. Then they told Africa that the bank is closed. But they don't want you to think about this. 101 companies on the London Stock Exchange control $1.3 trillion in African resources. And that's just in oil, coal, platinum, gold, and diamonds. The UK extracts $116 billion more from Africa every year than it returns in aid. Britain is South Africa's single largest international investor, with more than $65 billion invested. A recent UK-Nigeria trade deal alone was worth about $1 billion. Now, they need Africa's land. They need Africa's resources and Africa's labor and Africa's markets. If African nations banned British executives and investors the way Reform wants to ban African people, Britain would feel it immediately. You see, Africa is demanding justice. When Britain abolished slavery in 1833, they paid $25 billion in today's money, not to the enslaved, to the enslavers. The African people got nothing, and now their descendants are called an ethnic grievance. This is not policy. This is white supremacy with a parliamentary stamp. The refusal to repair is the continuation of the original sin. Africa holds the power. Africa holds the resources. Africa holds the future. And if you didn't know, now you know.
You did not vote on the resolution. You don't want to return the stolen artifacts. You don't want to pay reparations. And now you want to deny visas? Let's talk about something that should concern everyone. A resolution led by Ghana at the United Nations is pushing for global discussion surrounding the transatlantic slave trade and reparations. This is something that has been internationally recognized for decades. But here's where things get extremely disturbing. Reform UK is suggesting denying visas for people who are from countries that are demanding reparations. Let that sink in for a minute. Punishing everyday citizens, not governments, for historical accountability? That's not a resolution. That is literally retaliation. Visa systems are supposed to be about travel, fairness, opportunity, not political punishment. This does not resolve anything, and it doesn't change history. It deepens the division. And if we start weaponizing immigration policy like this, where does it stop? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.
Let's talk about the audacity. The UK's Reform Party just threatened to ban visas.
Should the UK block visas just because a country asks for slavery reparations? Reform UK says that if a country asks Britain for slavery reparations, people from that country should be blocked from getting UK visas. It was reported on the 7th of April 2026, and the proposal will link to countries including Jamaica and Ghana. It is a political proposal and not current UK law. From an immigration perspective, this is a huge statement because it would mean ordinary visa applicants could be affected based on their position of their government, not because of anything they personally did. We're talking about workers, students, visitors, family members, and business people. Legally, as things stand today, UK visa applications are decided under the immigration rules and the requirements of the relevant route. There is no current immigration rule that says someone can be refused a UK visa simply because their country is seeking reparations from Britain. This is a political stunt and not an active immigration policy. The wider backdrop is that calls for reparations have been growing internationally. The Guardian also reports that Commonwealth leaders intended to continue pressing the issue despite this proposal. So the real question is, should immigration control be used as a political weapon in historical disputes? Because once visas start being tied to international political disagreements, that goes far beyond border control. This isn't law right now, but it's definitely the kind of proposal migrants and businesses and advisors should be watching closely. Comment below and let me know what you think.
Imagine the government saying, if your country asks us to pay for slavery, we're going to ban you from coming here. Not the politicians, not diplomats, you. Students, nurses, workers. Well, that's actually what's being proposed. So this headline says, Reform UK accused of risking economy with visa threat over reparations. Want to know, Wagwan? Come in, let me tell you, because it'll be unsurprising to you that this is coming from Reform UK, who are currently doing well in the polls, where their Home Affairs spokesperson, Zia Youssef, basically said that if any country demands slavery reparations from the UK, a Reform government would stop issuing visas to their citizens. We're not talking about random countries here, we're talking about places like Jamaica, Ghana, Nigeria, aka countries with deep historical ties to Britain, and thousands of people coming here every single year to study, to work and contribute to the economy. Okay, let me break this down to you why this is not just wild, but it's also economically dumb. If you look last year alone, Nigeria issued 150,000 plus visas, Ghana 38,000 plus visas. These aren't just numbers, mind you, these are NHS workers, these are students paying international fees, these are skilled migrants filling labour shortages. So what Reform are basically saying is we're going to punish our own economy to make a political point about history. But they're framing it as, you know what, Britain's already did enough. We abolished slavery, didn't we? Cool. But what they don't want to mention is that the UK paid £20 million in 1837, not to the enslaved people, no, but to the enslavers. That's about £2 billion in today's money. And not only that, the descendants of enslaved people were paying taxes that contributed to reparations for the enslavers of their ancestors because they finished paying that bill in 2015. So let's be clear, compensation did happen, just not to the people that were actually enslaved. So what does this all mean? Well, politically, it's just classic culture war stuff. Of course, it's reform. Economically, they are risking labour shortages, they are risking university funding, as well as strained international relationships. And socially, they're basically saying to entire nations, because your government said something that we don't like, you people are no longer welcome here. And this is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable for certain people, because if you are from certain communities, African, Caribbean, and you're backing policies like this because you think it's economically smart, it's not. It's emotional politics dressed up as economics. Because there is nothing economically rational about cutting thousands of workers, students, and taxpayers from your own economy. In case you think this is about reparations, it isn't. It's immigration policy being used as a political weapon again.
Do you? If you are a Nigerian, a Ghanaian, from Kenya, Jamaica, Barbados, in fact, if your country was once among those countries that were enslaved, hello everyone, there is this topic that is blowing up right now, that the UK is pushing for a visa ban for any country that has been asking the UK to pay them for reparation. Slavery reparation. Now this is what this is all about. Now the Reform UK yesterday, or is it the day before yesterday, they made a bold statement that if they eventually win the elections in the UK, that they will stop issuing any new visa to people from Nigeria, from Ghana, Kenya, Jamaica, Barbados, and many other Caribbean countries that were bought, that their people were bought during the slave trade. Now, what is their argument? They say that these countries are asking for reparation, like a compensation for the role Britain played in the slave era. But the Reform, they are saying that they won't be paying that money because if for one thing that the UK or Britain, that Britain was the one that stopped the slave trade in 1807 and even stopped anything about slavery, abolishment of slavery in 1833. So that if there is anything that the taxpayer shouldn't be wasting their money to pay countries because of history of old. So political critics have called this bullying and racist. Personally, I don't even care. But then their argument is that slavery or the slave trade have left deep psychological and every other negative things in them and in their countries, and for one thing they need financial aid to sort them out, and they need justice. So currently there is no cause for alarm, there is no cause for panic, because this is not the law. This is no law. This is just a campaign promise trying to buy the heart of the British people, or the British people, to buy them over during the campaign so that they will gain their votes. So do not panic about this. It's nothing for now. Now, this is about history. This is about fairness. This is about justice. But my question is, how does it concern the visa? How does it concern the getting visa or not getting visa? If there is anything, sort it out with those countries. Shouldn't be affecting the ordinary man trying to better his life. So what do you think?
Do you think that it is time that the UK, England, pay up Jamaica its reparation money? Comment me inside of the comment section. Now, since the days of Michael Manley, Bruce Golding, PJ Patterson, Edward Seaga, all former prime ministers had one thing in common: that Britain must pay up its reparation money for slavery to the Jamaican people. Well, I'm here to tell you what Britain says about that, and any country that is currently seeking reparation, you need to hear about this. This is a major story, all right? It's a Wednesday, and I'm early with this post. One post a day, keep idleness away. So here is Virtual TV, not forgetting to give you a post every single day, all right? Yes, different location, different setup, with a whole heap of new things to come. I've been saying that for quite some time, but just wait. In the meantime, leave a like on the video, share the video, repost the video, and follow the page. Now, it has been a long-standing debate and conversation that the UK, Britain, should pay up its reparation money to Jamaica for slavery, right? Right. And as I listed, many former prime ministers all had a single thing in common, whether JLP or PNP, that they must pay. Well, according to the UK Reform Political Party, any country, including Jamaica, that is seeking from Britain for reparation will be blocked permanently by visas if you're seeking reparation. Now, they say that this is the move that they will implement when they come into power. They're saying this: work visas, visiting visas, visas at all levels if you're from Jamaica, and if the Jamaican government is seeking reparation when they step into power, when visas or visa entries will be blocked permanently, including countries like Jamaica, if you're going to seek reparation. What are your thoughts on that? I will be giving you more updates. Stay tuned. Enjoy the rest of your day.
On the surface, $6.6 billion seems like an astronomical amount for what Zia Youssef is saying enough is enough after Britain has paid that amount in foreign aid over 2 decades to countries demanding compensation. So now Britain is saying we're going to block visas from countries who are demanding slavery reparations. And this is why I'm about to break down how not only is this the most idiotic thing I've ever heard of, it is grossly insulting to people of color around the world. Let me first make it like crystal. At the height of the British Empire, they ruled a quarter of the Earth's surface. I'm going to say that again. A quarter of the Earth's surface, which translates from anywhere to 65 to 80 countries that were under British rule. Mind you, historian Stuart Laycock actually said that they have invaded all but 22 of the world's 200 recognized countries. Great Britain is a goddamn island. I'm going to use India as my example because if they are not one of, they're the most well-documented colonies of British Empire, right? From 1765 to 1938, Great Britain stole anywhere from 45 to 65 trillion dollars worth of resources from India alone. 173 years of pure pillaging. They dropped India's GDP from 25% to 4%. This right here is the Star of Africa, which is currently the world's largest mined white diamond ever. Mind you, they broke this off from the actual Cullinan diamond, which was 3,106 carats. That thing weighs 1.4 pounds. But the Star of Africa is actually a part of the British monarchy scepter. This diamond is worth $2 billion alone. So as far as I'm concerned, the British Museum ain't nothing but a giant ass storage unit from all the shit that country has stolen from everybody. Mind you, King Charlie over there got a 50% raise in his official annual income for the 2025-2026 year. Just for being king, because it falls under his official duties. Excuse me? So for this Sri Lankan politician to say it with chest, like this is giving attitude, to threaten people's visas because they've given enough money? Are you insane? The fact of the matter is, Britain can't even pay back India, let alone all the other countries that it stole from since the beginning of time. Because let me be like crystal, there is no British Empire without all the other countries that they took things from, including people.
This is for entertainment purposes only. So before the ink could dry on the UN declaration that transatlantic slavery and colonialism was the worst crime against humanity ever committed, African nations are already knocking on the colonizers' doors, and they're in a panic. They're in a total panic, family. In fact, the divided kingdom is trying to intimidate African nations by passing a law, a certain immigration law that would strip people from nations that seek reparations from Britain of either work permits or like tourism visas and all those visas and all stuff. Can you imagine calling it an insult that the colonized, that the slaves would dare to seek reparations from the crown? That's what they're thinking, for real, for real. And so it must be abundantly clear to you, to all of us by now, that they have never and still don't intend to live in a world where we are liberated, because we are the engine of humanity. French stops feeding on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger and becomes a third world country overnight. But all they have now is immigration laws, because we're back. And the kind of leaders incoming can't be taken out, can't be corrupted. If you know, you know. But they've changed the rules of the game so many times that you can't for a second believe that they'll finally be fair and give Africa its redemption. But the reason Africa is pushing for the UN to declare this and that is because what got us here in the first place was agreements and contracts and deals. Some we understood, some we didn't. Some we thought were one way, but they were actually another way. That's how we got here. Through lying, stealing, omitting, glossing over. And this whole confusion we're in is because of certain agreements that were made in the spirit with unknowingly by our so-called forefathers. And so don't take lightly this thing of the UN declaring transatlantic slavery as the worst crime ever, because it opens doors and it opens portals for justice to come in.
Critics add that restricting visas from these countries could create labor shortages and reduce economic growth. They say that punishing ordinary citizens because of decisions made by their governments is both ineffective and unfair. And honestly, that is where the debates becomes much more complicated. Should students hoping to study abroad lose opportunity because their government supports reparations? Should healthcare workers seeking employment be denied visas because of a political disagreement between nations? There are serious questions that deserve thoughtful decision rather than emotional reactions. Another major point highlighted in the video involves historical context. Critics remind viewers that when slavery was abolished, compensation was not paid to the formerly enslaved people. Instead, compensation was paid to the slave owners for the loss of what was considered their property at the time. That historical reality remains one of the strongest arguments used by advocates of reparations today. For many people in the Caribbean and Africa, the reparations movement is not simply about money. They view it as a conversation about historical justice, economical inequality, and acknowledging the long-term consequences of slavery and colonialism. Whether people agree or disagree with reparations, it's clear that the issue remains emotionally, powerfully, and politically significant. This video also mentioned recent discussions at the United Nations and other international forums where leaders continue to raise questions about colonial history and reparative justice. What makes this issue especially interesting is that it goes beyond politics. It touches on identity, history, economics, and the relationship between former colonial powers and countries that were once colonized. As I watched this video, one thing became clear. This debate is not going away anytime soon. Supporters of Reform UK's proposal believe they are defending British taxpayers and rejecting what they see as unreasonable demands. Opponents believe that proposal could damage Britain's international reputation, harm its economy, and unfairly target people who have nothing to do with government policy decisions. Regardless of where you stand, this issue deserves informed discussion rather than slogans and sound bites. the reality is that immigration and reparations are both incredibly complex subjects. There are facts, moral argument, economic consideration, and political interests all colliding in one debate. And that is why videos like this attract so many attention. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think countries should continue pursuing slavery reparations from Britain? Do you believe visa restrictions are an appropriate response? Or do you think there are better ways for nations to address historical grievances while maintaining strong international relations? Okay, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the discussion respectful and constructive, because this is a topic that affects billions of people around the world. If you enjoyed this reaction and analysis, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss future discussion on major global issues. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.